Hello, my friend. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. So 2020 has been quite the year, and I wanted to do something that kind of wrapped up this year for me, but in scent version. Every year brings its challenges, but this year has definitely brought a collective challenge upon the world. So I hope that some of you can relate to this. So let's start with January. The year started off cold and dark outside, as is usually the case in this part of the world. And I had previously tried a fragrance in a store when I was first getting into the Zoologist fragrances. I tried the full line, and then I waited for a new release to come out to try that to see if I would connect with it. But I did not, so I went with my initial first love from the line, which was Moth by Zoologist. This is definitely not a butterfly. This is a dark gothic moth. And it just, really went well with this time of year, the kind of comfort that I was seeking. And essentially, I was looking for my perfect honey. This is dark. This is beeswaxy. This is a fragrance that not a lot of people would connect with. And for that, I love her even more. So that was my January. Towards the end of January and the beginning of February, I went on a work trip to Berlin. And this was, one of those whirlwind trips where you pack kind of last minute and you get to the destination and you have a set schedule. In between this very busy schedule that I had, I made time to stop by a small boutique in Berlin that doesn't even have a website, I think, but they were a boutique that was just filled with perfumes from bottom to top. And this was a small business run by a man. So of course I wanted to support and buy something. I ended up buying 2 perfumes from this boutique. One of them was Mon Vetiver by Bruno Jovanovic for Essentiel Parfum. And this fragrance gave me exactly what I needed at this time. I needed to be focused. I needed to be alert for work, but yet I still also needed to feel like myself. So the freshness and the vetiver and the woodiness brought all of these things together for me. This was also a brand that I had been interested in and then finally saw in person. And I just love it when that happens and when you actually find something from that brand that you enjoy. March. I was so lucky that at the end of February and beginning of March, I got to go on a trip to Dubai with my family and also went to Abu Dhabi while we were there. So this was a trip to the Middle East, which I love Middle Eastern culture. And of course, I was there to explore a ton of fragrances. I tried to take you guys along with me on that trip as best as I could. When we went to Abu Dhabi on the final leg of our trip, I sought out Al Jazeera perfumes. I did not know very much about them, but I ended up getting a bottle of Château. And this was kind of like a spur of the moment purchase, but I just felt like the quality of these perfumes were so amazing. I didn't even sample them properly or anything. It was basically just sniff and choose. And I chose Château, and I'm so glad that I did because this is one of my most treasured fragrances. I believe it's a limited edition by Al Jazeera Parfum. The way that this just clings onto my body and becomes a part of me really makes me feel like I have found one of my fragrance soulmates. Everywhere I go and whenever I wear this, I always get someone asking, what is that? Because it's just so unusual for this part of the world to smell like this. April. The other scent that I bought from this special boutique was by a fragrance house that actually is from London, and I live in London. But it took me this trip to Berlin to actually open my eyes to this brand and to discover them. And it is Guimauve Trumper, who is known for their colognes. So they do, eau de cologne and body sprays. And I tried their line out, and this one just stuck out like a sore thumb. Milk of Flowers by Guimauve Trumper is like nothing else of the colognes that they have. I've acquired or accumulated quite a few Guimauve Trumpers since because they are at a great price point. And if you like your fougères and citrics and old-fashioned colognes, then that's definitely a brand to try out. Milk of Flowers had something special within her, and in March, towards mid-March, the pandemic pretty much hit Western Europe, and we were then forced to stay at home, and this was one of those comfort scents that I could hold on to. This is not a scent that I ever felt that was my personality or I would wear to go to a certain place or to go to work, but this was a scent that I just needed in my life. So I used this one on my linens and at bedtime because the smell of sweet flowers, basically milk of flowers, is such a perfect name for this one because it's the smell of the sweet nectar of a very specific flower. I don't know the name of this flower, but I know that I have smelled it before at a florist, and this evokes exactly that. So it was exactly what I needed in this time, to feel that even though I was indoors and somewhat a prisoner in my own home, that I could still feel the smell of fresh flowers. Being now stuck in the thick of the lockdown in the UK, I really used fragrances as a means to travel. Travel is something that is such an important part of my life that without it, I feel like I'm missing out on life. So I was very inspired by the perfumes that I had encountered in the Middle East when I had gone to the UAE, and I just wanted to evoke that even more. So I went to Ormonde, or online to Ormonde, and I got Taif Elixir, which is a combination of the Taif rose, the Middle Eastern rose, with oud. This is a powerful and very impressionable scent that, even though I wasn't going anywhere and I wasn't really trying to make an impression on anyone, this was impressing me on a daily basis, which, even though it's created by a Western brand, has been interpreted so beautifully that this really does the Middle Eastern style justice. When I had to look smart and optimistic and strong showing up for conference calls at work, despite everything else that was going on, then this one helped me achieve that. June. The shops had finally opened in June, and one of the first things I did was go straight to Les Senteurs and Javoy here in London, which are two of my favorite perfumeries. I needed something uplifting and that would work well with the warmer weather that we were now getting. And I had tried this fragrance a long time before. I went to Les Senteurs, I tried, a whole bunch of fragrances, but I couldn't make up my mind on picking any of those others without trying them even further. So I went with my original choice, one that I had tried before, which I often do. And it was B683 by Marc-Antoine Barrois. And this one was exactly what I needed in terms of spiciness, making me feel like I had my groove back, and one that I did not feel was overpowering or, offensive or anything. This became one of my go-to office scents because now I was creating this virtual office at home, which I'm still in. And I really needed something that would help me with that because I was struggling to focus working at home with a child. There was a lot going on in the world besides just the pandemic as well, which it was just mentally a very difficult time. So peppers help me feel alert. I've said this before. I like peppery scents for work. And yeah, this one did the trick. July. Now we were in the thick of summer here in the UK, and I wanted something that made me feel like I was on holiday. So I got a sweet orange blossom scent, which is Parfum, Guimauve de Noël. And this one I was very obsessed with at the time. I was actually spraying this at least every day, and usually I don't wear a scent every day, like for days and days on end. This one just took me out of my daily setting and made me feel like, just very happy. This was sugary sweet, lifted my mood, and made me feel like a summer goddess. So this was one of my most used fragrances of this year. Then came August. Now we were moving towards the hottest time of the year, and we had booked a trip to Milan and to Denmark at this point. Arabian Oud was having a sale, so I wanted to get a fragrance that had been on my list for a long time, and that was Calumet Black. This was one that had made an impression on me from the first time that I had ever stepped foot in an Arabian Oud shop, long before that. And this one was me preparing for being on a trip and having something to wear that was alluring in the nighttime. So this was actually a good complement to this one that would be a daytime sweet scent, and then having this one for evening wear as that spicy summer goddess that I wanted to be. So Calumet Black, has been a good one. September. When September came, It was kind of a stickier heat that I was experiencing because we had traveled to Milan, and I tried to take you guys along on that trip as well, showing you the different shops and whatnot. And because we were traveling during the pandemic, we had to, of course, take all of the safety measures necessary, and I needed a scent that would follow me around and make me feel clean and sort of sanitized, but also calm at the same time. And the one that represented this trip for me was La Thémis by Maison, which is a fresh crushed leaves scent that I could easily apply whenever I needed to freshen up without it being offensive to anyone. And this was, yeah, basically the scent for me for September. We went home to where my parents live, and it was just so great seeing family again. It's actually the last time that we've seen them, but it was nice to kind of hit reset, you know, and be reminded that, you know, you're not alone. October. Sandalwood seems to have some healing properties for me. And every time that things were kind of regressing in terms of the world situation, I would turn towards my sandalwood scents. One of them was Smuggler's Soul by Lush that I used a lot in the springtime during the first lockdown. But then in the fall, we kind of came to terms with the fact that the rest of the year was not going to be any better. So I treated myself with a bottle of Jardin's Sandalwood Temple, which evokes that sandalwood. It gives me that sandalwood fix that is so calming, but also has a milkiness to it, so that I felt this extra comfort from the sandalwood. The other sandalwood that I wore in the springtime had some vetiver and citruses to kind of uplift and to go with the whole spirit of that time of year. But this milkier, creamier rendition really helped to provide me with some comfort. November. One of the fragrances that I've reached for a lot as the days have gotten shorter and darker, waking up when it's dark and going to bed when it's dark, basically seeing more darkness than lightness during the day, has been Mocha Muscari by Prosody London. And this one has been quite an eye-opener for me, and also something that has catapulted this movement of me looking for more natural fragrances, and realizing that because a fragrance is natural or organic does not mean that it has to be boring. So this one has been a very comforting, slightly orange, peely, ambery fragrance that has provided a lot of warmth for me during November. And then last but not least, December, the month that we are in now, that is now coming to an end, this year coming to an end. And Mandodari by Prin has been my scent of December, my scent of the moment. A lot of complexity inside a bottle, a lot of stories to tell, a lot of things to unfold. And also something that reminds me of my past, is a trigger for memories of being in Southeast Asia as a child, of being at a sacred temple that has all of the exotic flowers that you find in that part of the world. And adding some old school glamour that I really enjoy this time of year. I often reach for my aldehydic fragrances, my Chanel No. 5s, my knowings. And Mandodari is just a whole different type of interpretation on that type of glamour for me. Being an aldehydic fragrance that has so much depth to it, with civet and with opium and with teakwood in the background, and this otherworldliness, but something that I really enjoy wearing in my home for myself. And if 2020 has taught me anything, it is to do things that make you happy. I hope that you enjoyed that little trip down 2020 lane with me and can kind of relate to that whole reflection thing. I don't want to sound too cliche or anything, but scent really is a big definition for my life, and it has been a major, even more so, an influencer this past year, where we've been at home and we've had to spend a lot of time with ourselves. Please share which fragrances have had an impact for you this year. If you'd like to share, of course, I'd love to read and to understand where you're coming from and how your experience has been and how that may have been reflected in your choices of fragrances. and I hope to see you very, very soon for another video. Thank you for watching.